how to play the Apollo Mine print and play RPG in under 15 minutes. Apollo Mine is a new solo RPG come roll and write by Paper Dice Games and James Horan, but also myself as well, built upon the Dwarf Mine system, a very similar game. Obviously it's a space-based game and so not that similar. Now this is written by me, so I won't be giving it a score at the end, but I will be trying to be fair and compare it to other some sort of comparable games as we go through. It's currently going for about $9, so although I don't know if it will be cheaper at a later time, but it's worth checking out just to find out if there is a sale going on. It's about 30 minutes in length if you know what you're doing, but if you use the expansions it can take up to 2 hours plus for a game. However, the average from testing has been about 45 minutes. The game is a mapping base building game where you create a moon base. Essentially, you dig deeper to get more resources and you build more and you try to stay alive for as long as you possibly can. Anyone who knows Dwarf Mine will know how to play, but for those who don't, the game is a cross between something like Anna Blackwell's Umbra or Delve if you haven't played the Space Edition, in the sense that you build up your dungeon and you manage population, resources, drawing out your base. However, it also crosses between something like D100 Space 2 as you draw rooms and corridors, working out the best placement and how best to ensure that you don't end in ruin. However, that said, you don't track as many things as either of those games, so it is slightly simpler. It is, of course, closer to Dwarf Mine, although there are more things than Dwarf Mine that you do have to track. I'll stop for now just to tell you a little about the story, just so you can understand the rest of the rules really. This sits in a world similar to ours, but when America first landed on the moon, the USSR was a close second, and the space race never ended. You're now using moon bases, using massive Sea Dragon rockets, launching a nuclear-powered station, and striving to survive on the lunar surface. The game is made up so you can play as any nation, although there is additionally a commercial company in one of the expansions as well. So it has a lot of similarities to the new space race in regards to America, Russia, China, and of course the commercial companies that are going up there too. The base game is included in the pack. However, there are also a series of expansions included as well. They're not separate like they are with Dwarf Mine. So the first one is Moon History. This is essentially where you can create additional complexities, the rewards in the map, so adding things like lava tubes, but also sort of sections where you can have more discoveries. There's Space Complexity, a series of alternative end game bosses to extend the replay value of the game. We really had a lot of fun in regards to these and how we're putting them together, so I think these are really quite fun. You also have Astro Command. This allows you to sort of cherry pick unique abilities for your base commander. So these can have really positive impacts, things that can have a positive impact immediately or later on in the game, but also they can make things slightly harder as well if you prefer a harder game. There's then Artifacts and Curses. This gives you powerful abilities, but also horrible curses that gives you lots of replay. There's also some achievements that go with these as well, so the more that you use a specific artifact or curse, the more achievements you can get, and then eventually you get an additional bonus for that too. And then finally, you have two new ways to play the game as well. So the first one is Beyond the Moon, which sees you build a rocket and then reach beyond the moon, of course, and then start up a bit of a galactic empire. And then that final one is the Commercial Interest expansion. So this is a story-driven expansion that sees you go up to the moon as a commercial company. You take over a failed base that's currently on the moon and you run numerous bases at the same time. This is one of the ones that takes considerably longer. The game only requires a map, but this could be replaced with some graph paper and a series of RPG dice. You're going to need a D4, a D6, a D8, a D10, a D12 and a D20. You don't use these at the same time. Essentially it's a bit of a dice chain being involved. Simply put, the deeper that you go down in the moon base, the higher up the chain that you go, or the larger the dice that you roll. You can also have some buildings that have a positive impact and allow you to jump up that chain as well. There are two play sheets. So the first one is the mine map itself and the second one is the base sheet. We'll start with the base sheet. It's quite simple. You track your resources, silica, discoveries and volatiles. These are the only things that are likely to go up and down as you purchase rooms and things like that. There's also the base age, which is how many turns you've had, and the base level 1 to 4. I'll get onto these further on as they are more appropriate for a different section. However, generally speaking, you get resources equal to the base age plus 3. Therefore, you need to roll whatever one of the dice you are currently and then +3, and it gives you that specific thing on a table. We will go through some rolls later on so you can see exactly how that works. The base level I'll describe in a minute, but you also have extra bits on your base sheet for a dice chain, personnel, prestige. The idea is you want to survive to the end point of the game with the highest prestige, and then also there's a section to write out anything that you want in regards to your game, and then also you can make yourself a space badge too. Talking about the end point, unlike Dwarf Mine, you do actually have an end point with Apollo Mine. You can either fail, which is when your personnel falls to 0 or lower, your base age reaches 30, which is essentially 30 turns, a success, or you manage to get to the bottom of your moonscape and survive for 10 rounds. That can also happen at the same time as your base age. You may want to extend it just to see if you can survive 10 rounds, if it pushes you slightly beyond your 30 turns as well. Talking about the moonscape, this is where you build your base. There are 3 different maps in the game. The standard lunar map, this is the one that I'd suggest you probably start with. The crater map, just for some variation. This allows you to do certain other things like build some more buildings, specifically the radiation barrier buildings. We'll get into those later as well. And then finally you have an abandoned base map, which is used in one of the expansions, but also gives you a bit of a higher challenge as it comes with some voids that you either have to avoid or make use of. You start your game by placing your landing ship somewhere on the surface of the moon, and you slowly dig down building out your base. You have to build at least 1 corridor each turn. However, you can build a building instead of a corridor if you so wish, but you do have to build something. You can also build some specific rooms on the surface, such as the radiation shields that I mentioned previously, to combat radiation, which is a new game feature that we'll mention. There are a lot of new buildings that come with this. Some of them have to be built on the surface, some of them will be built underground. You can only have so many of certain ones. I'll run them through quickly on the screen here, just so you can see kind of what they look like. And then on the right side, you'll see a series of numbers. Now these state your base level, so each time that you start a building or mining within a new level, you'll have to then start using that new table which correlates to that level. These essentially give you more resources or better resources, but you're also more likely to get harder combat as you go down as well. Therefore, you want to make sure that you only dig into these levels once you're really building up a strong enough base and you can combat anything that comes with you. Of course, the rewards are greater, so there is a push to want to go down. We'll start how you play before we show you some test rolls. So first of all, we'll mention the dice chain. As I mentioned earlier, you have all of those D4 to D20 dices. Now it does look complicated initially, but essentially you start off with a D4 for attacks. You purchase a building or a room to increase your dice, and then you move up to a D6, a D8, a D12, whatever it might be. And essentially this just chronicles exactly where you are and which dice you should be using. It's nowhere near as complicated as it looks, but you do need a full set of RPG dice. The game itself consists of rounds. Each round has 5 parts. Part 1 is really simple. It's just updating your mine age. It's actually really important that you do this at the start of your round because it does have an impact as you start rolling later on, as you'll see. Essentially it starts at 0, your very first level, and so the first thing that you do in your very first game is change that to a 1. Really quite simple, but it is an important thing to do. Part 2 is the building phase. So this is when you can build your corridors, and if you can afford them, you can also build rooms. You can build as many corridors as you want each turn, but rooms do cost sort of money, resources, or special items, sometimes a combination of each. Rooms give you a boost in some way. There are lots of different rooms and they will give you a different boost. However, each room has its own shape that you have to fit into your base. So it's worth noting the specifics that you need from your base before you then start building it. For example, a really good one here is you need a really long, thin section to have a rocket if you're doing one of the expansions. Therefore, you're going to need to plan out an area that you can build that in and not build anything else by mistake. Because once you have a building, you can't remove it. There needs to be, as I mentioned, at least 1 square between each room, a corridor. They have to be connected by a corridor to another room. You can't just have them sort of out on their own. So there does have to be a bit of a network going on. You can build as many rooms as you can afford given every turn. It's worth noting that you need to build at least something every turn, as I say, even if it's just 1 singular corridor. However, you can't have long corridors. So this is a new thing that we have specifically in this game that isn't in Dwarf Mine. If you have a corridor that's too long, it will collapse. And as a result, you can only have it at a maximum of 5 cells. The next phase, phase 3, is the resource phase. So this is essentially the first roll that you have in your game. You'll roll on the resource table equal to your base level. So at the start you'll be on level 1, and so you'll roll your resource table for level 1. You'll roll a d8 plus your base age. Whatever you get in this table is what you physically found whilst mining, which is why you have to mine at least 1 square every turn, and you only roll once regardless of how much you've mined. So let's say you built 1 room or you built 14 rooms, it doesn't matter, you only roll once. Phase 4 is the combat phase. So once again, you look up on the same table that you did for your resources for the lowest part of your mine, and you roll that d8 and you add your base age. A few things that might happen here: you can either go with no combat. Sometimes you get personnel additional, sometimes you have someone or something that's going to attack you, and sometimes you also gain more radiation as well. Note that you will gain radiation anyway, so this is additional radiation. I'll explain in phase 5, which is the radiation phase, after this combat phase. So combat is made up of attacking and defending, which happens at the same time using the attack die that you found on your base sheet or whatever you have in your chain. You roll this dice, and the amount of damage that you've done to your enemy is given purely on the dice. So let's say you roll a d8 and you get an 8, that's 8 points of damage. Therefore it makes sense for you to want to have the highest dice possible. The d20 is more likely to do a higher damage than a d4, for example. Defending is done exactly the same way, but of course it uses the attacking enemies dice, which is listed on the information that you have there. We'll see that in a second. And when you take damage, it reduces your population by that amount. This process repeats until you either have 0 population, or you've lost, or the enemy has 0 life and you've died. The important thing to note, however, is that the attack and defend happens at the same time. So you may attack the combatant straight away, kill them, however you also have to defend for them as well, so you're likely to take lives in some way. So it's worth noting that those happen at the same time. Some enemies are slightly different, but they'll state this in the table. The end level bosses in particular are generally speaking different. Phase 5 is the radiation phase. So each turn you gain 5 radiation minus your base level. So for example, let's say at the start your base level is 1, that means you gain 5 radiation minus 1, so you gain 4. For each radiation your base gains in that turn, you lose that many personnel. Now you can build rooms to help you avoid radiation damage. I would suggest you look into these because at the start they are very important. However, you have to be aware of where you place these on the surface. You need 5 cells to be able to be lined up directly in order to place one. So that A, there's a limit of how many you can place, but also depending on where you put your landing ship, you may not be able to put as many radiation shields as you so wish. In addition to this, you can get more radiation damage from some of those combat scores, so you can also have more than whatever your 5 radiation minus base level radiation is. You then repeat these 5 phases until you've either built up your base so it's able to continue regardless of the dangers, or until you have died, in which case you need to look at your prestige, your age, how much how much resources that you have at the end of your game, and then essentially this is your score. You can compare this directly to the scores of Dwarf Mine too, however Apollo Mine is a harder game, so just bear that in mind. Okay, so with that in tow, let's play a test roll or two. So I've put up a game here. We're going to start right in the middle of the game essentially. I've set up a bit of a base. We're down to level 2 on the mine. We've also built 2 training centres, meaning that we have an attack dice of d8, and we built 2 living quarters, which means we gain 2 personnel each turn. Now, I've done a bad job on this map on purpose just so I can show you some more of the elements of the game, so I would not suggest copying this look. So phase 1 is really quite simple. I just add 1 to my base age, making it a age of 3. This will become important as we go down. Phase 2 is building phase. So I've decided that I'm going to build a radiation shield. I think it's really important, and as a result I'm going to spend 4 resources that I have in my bank and build that radiation shield on the surface. Due to other buildings that I've already built, specifically the living quarters, I gain 2 more personnel on this turn as well, bringing up my total to 6 personnel. Phase 3, I roll on the resources table. Now, I'm base level 2, as I mentioned previously, so I roll on that table. I've got a 4. I've added my base age of 3, which means I have a total of 7. So I gain 5 resource and 2 silica, as per the table. Phase 4 is the combat roll. So I roll a d8 plus 3 for my base age, which takes me to a total of 11. I get killer robots. So, as a quick reminder, combat happens at the same time. So attack and defense happens at the same time. I'm going to roll my attack first, but you can do either one, whatever you prefer. So I'm going to roll my attack dice. It's a d8 and I get 4. Now that just so happens to be the health of the killer robot, so it dies. Fantastic. But it was able to attack me before it died, so I have to roll a defense roll as well. It rolls a 1d6, which is 3. That means I lose 3 personnel, meaning I only have 3 personnel left in my base. Now, phase 5 is a radiation phase. I gain 5 radiation, minus my base level, which is 2, meaning that I would get 3 radiation. Now that means normally I would lose 3 personnel. However, I've just built a radiation shield. Now the good thing about a radiation shield is it reduces my radiation by 1 every turn, meaning I only lose 2 personnel, meaning I'm left with just 1. Now, I'm alive. It's not looking good, but I am alive. Now again, phase 1 for the next turn would just be adding up a single year to my age, taking me to age level 4. And then phase 2, I would gain an additional 2 personnel because I've already got those living quarters. You can gain more personnel by building more living quarters, and you can also build more defenses in order to avoid certain attacks from enemies. And then, as I mentioned previously, there are elements in there to avoid some radiation as well. But the deeper I go in my mine, the less radiation I'm going to get every turn. If I get all the way down to zone 4, I'm going to get 5 minus 4, so that means I'm going to get 1 radiation every single turn. Therefore, there's a reason to go down. The speed in which I go down is important, because the faster I can go down, the faster I can avoid that radiation. Overall, I think it's a great little game. It's a mix of mapping strategy, base building and management all merged together. It is very much like Dwarf Mine, but it takes that and kind of runs with the idea, adds that space theme, adds some more complexity as well, and then it combines all of those expansions into one. So I think it's a really good value. It's fairly cheap considering its size as well. It takes about 30 minutes to play, as I've mentioned previously, but it can go on longer, and you can continue and build up more and more bases if you so wish, as per the expansions. It does initially seem fairly simple, considering there's a limited pool of buildings that you can have, but actually there's a lot of strategy going on in regards to which buildings you build and when you build them and what map that you have and how to build them together. And so I think this is a really good game from a replay value point of view. From a personal point of view, I have played maybe 30 or 40 different ones of these specific games in Apollo Mine while doing testing, but also I've played maybe 30 or 40 different Dwarf Mine games as well, so I definitely think there's a lot of retail value there. I will have the links down below where you can pick this up, and I hope you enjoy the game. And if you do have any questions at all, just drop them below and I'll be happy to answer anything that I can. Thank you and have a good day.